We all use Google Maps. It's just there. We trust it, right? We trust it to show us a perfect one-to-one digital copy of our world. But what if that copy isn't perfect? What if it's been edited? What if there are secrets hidden right there in plain sight, in all those blurs and smudges and empty spaces?
So let's actually dive into that. What is being hidden? Because the world you see on your screen, well, it isn't always the world as it truly is. We're about to take a little tour of the map's hidden places. And we're gonna start with a site so common, you probably never even given it a second thought.
Okay, so picture this. You're driving down the street, digitally of course, on Google Street View, and you see all of familiar sites, like this Kentucky Fried Chicken. Looks totally normal, nothing strange here, right?
But then, you look a little closer, and you realize that on every single KFC, everywhere in the world on Street View, the face of Colonel Sanders is blurred out. Why would Google go out of its way to censor the face of a corporate mascot? Now, this isn't some big conspiracy, but it is our very first clue.
Yeah, this first mystery, it doesn't begin with some secret government plot or anything like that. It all starts with a simple, automated quirk of technology. It really just comes down to this. Google's privacy software is programmed to automatically find and blur any human face its cameras happen to capture. And since Colonel Harlan Sanders was, a real person, the system sees his image on all those signs and says, hey, that's a face, and blurs it to protect his identity. It's a totally accidental act of digital privacy for one of the most famous faces on the planet.
So, that automated blur? That's really just the beginning. From here, the story starts to build. Because what happens when the blur isn't an accident? What if it's an intentional choice? What if you wanted to erase your own home from the map?
Well, it turns out anyone can do it. From massive celebrities like Paul McCartney down to just regular folks, you can submit a request to Google to have your property blurred. It's actually a pretty simple process, and it's all designed to give you a little more control over your digital presence. So why would somebody do this? Well, the reasons, as you can probably guess, are straightforward and honestly deeply personal. It's all about protecting your privacy from, say, potential stalkers. It's about preventing criminals from digitally casing your property. And ultimately, it's about taking back a little piece of control over your own digital footprint in a world that pretty much demands we share everything.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. This decision is final. Once your home is blurred, it cannot be unblurred. It is a permanent digital redaction. And that idea leads us away from personal privacy and into a much, much darker story. Sometimes, a place is blurred not to hide who lives there, but to erase a memory. A place so horrific that its very image is considered too painful or maybe even too dangerous to exist on the map.
This is 2208 Seymour Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. For an entire decade, it was a prison. A man named Ariel Castro held 3 young women captive inside, subjecting them to just unimaginable abuse. The story only came to an end when one of them, Amanda Berry, managed to escape in 2013. The house itself? It was demolished shortly after, but on Google Maps, it lives on, as a blur. Those were Amanda Berry's first words of freedom to a 911 operator, words that brought an end to an absolute nightmare. And while the house itself is physically gone, its digital ghost is still there on the map. And the decision to blur it creates this strange and really deeply unsettling effect. And this quote, it highlights a really chilling consequence. The picture of the house you see on Street View is frozen in time. It was taken in 2009 while the crimes were still happening inside. So by blurring it, Google inadvertently traps the virtual visitor, traps us, in that moment. You're left just staring at this blurred shape, knowing the absolute horror that's occurring inside, but you're completely powerless to do anything about it. It becomes a permanent digital monument to an active tragedy. So, from personal trauma, we now zoom way out to national secrets. Because if individuals can ask to be forgotten, you can bet that governments demand it. What you're looking at here is a pattern of official censorship from all over the globe. Way up in the Siberian Sea, Janate Island just shows up as a big black smudge, which of course fuels theories of a secret Russian military base. Then, in French Polynesia, the Mururoa Atoll is heavily blurred, hiding the site where they did decades of nuclear tests. And in conflict zones like Gaza, the images are often years old and super low resolution, basically obscuring the reality on the ground. These aren't glitches, these are deliberate omissions. So, okay, we've seen places hidden by technology, by personal choice, and by governments. But what about the gaps on the map that have no explanation at all? What happens when the map itself just seems to be wrong? This last part of our journey, this is where things take a turn into the truly unsettling. Because this isn't about censorship or privacy anymore. This is about stories where the digital world and the real world, they don't just differ, they actively contradict each other. So this story, it begins with a man. We'll call him Oliver Grant. And he was just looking for a house he used to visit as a kid. He knew the street, he knew exactly what the house looked like.
He actually drove there in person, and sure enough, the house was standing right where he remembered it. 2 stories, green shutters, that old wooden porch. It was real. It was there. But on Google Street View, there was nothing. Not a blur, not a smudge, just an empty grass lot. As if the house had never even been built, and the digital record going back more than a decade showed that same empty space.
And here's where it gets truly chilling. Oliver went back to the street just 2 months later, and the house was gone. The lot was empty grass, exactly like it had looked on Google Maps all along. It was like reality itself had changed to match the map's error.
Now this story, while it is from a work of fiction, it taps into a very real, very modern anxiety. We put so much trust in our digital maps to be these perfect mirrors of reality. But what happens when they disagree? Which world do we end up trusting more? And which one, in the end, is really more powerful? It really makes you think, doesn't it? The map isn't just a reflection of our world anymore. It's becoming a part of our world, with the power to erase, to hide, and maybe even to change it. So, the next time you're scrolling around and you see some unexplained blank space, you gotta wonder, what's really there? Or maybe, what was there?